Hello guys and welcome back to Thread Coders. Today we are diving into the fascinating world of object oriented programming, which also known as OOP. We use Java as the programming language to implement these OOP concepts. Whether you are new to programming or looking to refresh your knowledge, this tutorial will help you to understand the core concepts of OOP. So let's get started. Before we jump into coding, let's first understand what is object oriented programming. What object oriented programming is all about. OOP is a programming paradigm that uses objects to design applications and programs. An object can be anything that we see around us. You can see there's a mobile phone, here's a car, and there's a cat. All of this stuff around us, all these things are objects. This mobile phone is an object, this car is an object, this cat is also an object, but this cat is a living object. So all the objects are surrounded with us. So when we go to coding, when we go to programming, we use these concepts to do our task using OOP. Now let's see what is a class. Actually, class is a blueprint, or we can call it as a template for the real world entities. So class defines properties and behaviors. If we take a mobile phone as an example, this mobile phone is a class as we described in the previous slide. There are some properties for a mobile phone. They are color, cost, battery life, and there are some more too. Also there are behaviors such as making a call, play music, take a photo. These are the properties and behaviors of this blueprint or this template. That is what we called a class. So classes could have properties and behaviors. An example for class, actually object which makes using this template is a phone. So in Java, this class is called a user-defined data type. We know in Java there are some data types such as int, double, string, bool, float. These are primitive type of data which we get as inbuilt data types. But we can make a user-defined data type using a class. So now let's see what are these attributes and methods. Earlier we discussed in this mobile phone template there are properties such as color, battery life, and cost. You know, this template has these properties, but when we using a class in Java, we call them as attributes. Attributes are called as properties when we come to actually the properties are called as attributes when we come to OOP. Also, make a call, take a photo. These are the behaviors of this mobile phone template, this mobile phone blueprint. So we call them as methods when we come into a OOP concept. So a class could have attributes which are the properties of that template. Also a class could have a method or many methods which are the behaviors of that blueprint. Now let's see what are the objects. Because we are talking about OOP, object oriented programming, we must specially focus on these objects. Actually, an object is a specific instance of a class. you can see this mobile phone is the template or the blueprint that we use as a class. So this mobile phone has a specific instance of making an Apple phone. So a mobile phone is the template or the blueprint. Apple phone is the object. Samsung phone is another object. Huawei phone is another object which was created using this template. So now let's start our programming using this OOP concepts. Now let's start with this OOP concepts using a student class. We can create the first class in Java as a student. So student is the blueprint or the template. You can see 3 students are in the screen. We'll call this guy as Jack. We'll call her as Anne, and we'll call her as Masha. So Jack is an object of the student class. Anne is an object of the student class, and Masha is also an object of this student class. Now let's start our programming. Let's go to the table and start our Java coding. Okay guys, now let's start our first creation of Java classes. So first of all, I created a folder, a directory called coding. You can create in a desired location which you like. So I will first create a Java class. I'll create a student class here. Okay, now you can see a student class was created, and now let's create the student attributes and student methods. You know, attributes are the properties of these students. What are the properties of a student? He or she could have a name. So I'll create string name, and let's give him a name as John. Now also he could have his marks. So let's create marks, a variable called marks, and let's give him 85 marks. So these are the attributes of this student class. I'll get it very simple, no need to get it more complex by adding more attributes. I just need to give you the idea of these attributes and methods. So these are the attributes. I will use only these 2 attributes, and let's make a method. So as a method, I'll create a method to display his name and his marks. So let's create a method public, return type is void, and let's get the name as output details. So this is the method, actually the behavior of this student class. Now let's display his name equals let's give his name as, we have created already a variable name, and also once again system dot out dot println, and let's print his marks here. Now the creation of our student class is done. Now let's run this code. But actually, to run a Java program, we need a main method. So let's create that main method. Let's go back to our directory coding, and let's right click on it and create another Java class. So I'll name it as main. This is the main class, and let's create the main method in this one. The main method, you can just type it as main and enter. Public static void main string args. So this is the main method, and to use our student class in this main method, we must create objects. Actually, we must create instances of this class. Now let's create an instance. Student, let's give it as a std equals new student. So the object has created. By using this instance, we can access marks, name, and also the method is also there, output details. So let's access this one, output details, and let's run this program and see whether we can see the outputs. You can see the output: name John and marks 85. So you can see the output simply. So guys, now let's try to get these inputs, actually the name and the marks of this student, by the user, not by just given by me. We'll prompt a user to enter the name and marks. So let's create it by the scratch. So let's create once again the student class, public class. The name of the class is student, and the class is created, and then we'll give the attributes string name and int marks. So the attributes were given. Let's make a method to get the inputs, to get the name and marks from a user. But before creating this method, we need a scanner to get these values from a user. For that, we need to create an object from the inbuilt class scanner. So let's do it first. Let's get this one, scanner scan equals new scanner, and we'll get the input by system.in. But we must import this one, this inbuilt class. It is in java.util library. We can import this scanner class by this one. Because it is an inbuilt one, we have to import and use it. So the attributes are created. A scan instance from the scanner class was created. Now let's create a method, actually a method to our student class, a behavior of the student class. To get the inputs, public void, and let's name it as input details. Right, you can see this method is to get the details of the student. Let's go out and let's give prompt the user as enter the name. Let's go without this ln, so we can get it on the same line, and let's wait name is equal to scan dot next line. So now we are waiting for the user to enter a value to this name variable. Also, let's prompt the user to enter the marks. This one also, let's remove this ln part. And let's prompt the user to input scan. We are using the instance of this scanner inbuilt class. The scan is an instance that we are using. We are getting this time an integer, so we use next int. So the input detail, this function, actually this method is completed. Now let's create the output method as we created in the last part. So it was given as output details, and let's give the details, print the name, this name, and let's print the marks. Okay, and now let's see whether we can get as we expected. So let's save this by pressing Ctrl S, and let's go to main.java. Let's use the same name here, output details. And okay, before getting the output, this time we need to get the inputs. So std, and we can see this method input details. From this method we can get the details because we are prompting to input the name and marks. From this one, from output details, we can get the outputs, name and mark. So let's see whether it works. So you can see enter the name. So let's enter the name John, and enter the marks. Let's enter it this time as 76. Press enter. You can see the name is John and marks are 76. From this one, did you get a problem? Because we are creating a student here, student class here, but we are giving only a single character. We can give only a single character. We can use more and more student objects to get more students in this class. So I think you got that idea, and let's move into another important section in this OOP, that is constructors. Let's create a constructor now. So let's move into student.java, this student class. You can see we are taking these scanners. Scan is created on this one, and we are giving a method to scan the name and marks. Instead of this, let's create a constructor to get this name and marks, actually to get these variables at the creation of the object. When we create such an object, we can pass the name and marks. It will be easy to handle. When we handle with thousands of variables and hundreds of classes with many classes and many variables here and there, it will be really easy to handle with constructors. So let's move into this concept, constructors. So let's delete this input details method. Also, we don't need a scanner instance here. Right, you can see here a class was created and the attributes are here. Now let's create the constructor of this class. It is as public. We can use the same name as the class. So public student, and let's give name and marks as parameters. Let's create string name comma int marks, and let's create this method. So you can see when we calling this constructor, we need to pass a name and marks. So to get this more clarified, I'll write it as name equals name and marks equal marks. So it will be somewhat confusing. To reduce this confusion, I'll use the names as different. So let's use these names as this one as object name, and this one as object, sorry for it, object marks, and this one also object name. And let's give this one for this position, and let's give this one for this position. Now you can see these are the attributes and these are the parameters that we pass to the constructor. Now we'll not change this one, and now let's move to our main class, and you can see there's an error because no input details class at this moment. So let's delete it, and you can see there's another error. So what is that error? So when we create a new instance of this class, according to this constructor, we need to pass a name and marks. So we need to do this one in our main method. Right, now let's pass. Before we passing, let's now let's pass name comma marks, but you can see no names and no marks in this method. So we need to get those name and marks. String name equals, for clarification, let's use this as test name, and let's get int test marks, and we need to create once again a scanner instance to get these things from a user. So let's create a scanner class here, scan equals new scanner. So to use this one, we need to import this one in IntelliJ. It automatically imports this thing. So we have use a scanner here. We need to input system.in to get the inputs. Okay, now using this scan instance, we can get the variable values to initiate this string test name and test marks. So now let's give the user, prompt the user, enter the name and let's use the scan instance here. And let's use next line. Okay, you can see next line here. But where can we store this? We need to store that in test name. Okay, now let's scan to get the marks here. Test marks equals scan dot next int. From this we can get the values from the user, and let's pass these things as the parameters, actually as the arguments to this constructor. By using this we can also get the same output. Let's try whether we can get the same output here. So we can see, enter the name. You can see I used this time println, so my cursor is on the next line. In my previous occasion, before using constructors, I cleared this ln part in println, so it appeared in the same position. Now let's give the name John and enter. So unfortunately I haven't set, you can see there's no prompt to get the test marks, so let's just enter a mark here, 81, and enter. So name is John and marks is 81. For clarification, let's use it once again. Let's do it once again and let's give enter the marks. Let's run it again. See, let's enter the name as John, enter the marks, let's enter this time as 81, and John, name is John and marks are 81. So that's the thing that we have done through OOP. We have created a constructor and pass both of these attributes at the creation of, actually at the initiation part has done in the creation of object. So guys, that's all for the day, and let's meet quickly with another OOP concept. Until that, take care.